Hi, I'm Nick Fiore, and this is Visual Stories. Fall New Vegas, the 2011 title from Obsidian Entertainment, is remarkable to me as a landmark in world building. Each character, location, and line of dialogue, no matter how trivial, plays into creating a truly realized world.
A fair point.
Before I completely begin, I want to tell the story of the first time I played New Vegas. I lacked any real notion of what it meant to play amongst or against a rich character, and given the games that I had played up until this point, that wasn't unexpected.
The contents of the vault are rightfully the property of the Atlas Corporation. But you, you belong to me.
Adios, jefe. So little imagination.
We will unleash such terrible vengeance that generations yet unborn will cry out in anguish.
Now, these games aren't necessarily bad games, they just had bad villains and characters. Even the previous Fallout had a pretty lackluster antagonist, Colonel Autumn. So going into Fall New Vegas and hearing about Caesar's Legion, I thought I knew exactly what they were and who their leader was. And then I was presented with this conversation.
It's a philosophical theory, the kind you might encounter if you took time to read some books. The fundamental premise is to envision history as a sequence of dialectical conflicts. Each dialectic begins with a proposition, a thesis, which inherently contains or creates its opposite, an antithesis. Thesis and antithesis. The conflict is inevitable, but the resolution of the conflict yields something new, a synthesis, eliminating the flaws in each, leaving behind common elements and ideas. The bombs wiped the slate clean. Human civilization descended to a level of ignorance that effectively set our cultural progress back to zero. The NCR has all the problems of the ancient Roman Republic: extreme bureaucracy, corruption, extensive senatorial infighting. Just as with the ancient Republic, it is natural that a military force should conquer and transform the NCR into a military dictatorship. Thesis and antithesis. The Colorado River is my Rubicon. The NCR Council will be eradicated, but the new synthesis will change the Legion as well, from a basically nomadic army to a standing military force that protects its citizens and the power of its dictator.
That was Caesar, or Kaiser, played by the great character actor John Doman, whose commanding voice brings a character who is surrounded by guards with football armor, sound menacing, and more importantly, sane. Kaiser is the totalitarian ruler of the Legion and one of the main superpowers of New Vegas. He has crafted the Legion after Roman society after the fall of the Roman Republic. He commits this identity of Roman life from the hierarchy of command to the overt use of slavery and brutal standards by which to run his army. I was entranced by him. I was moved in a way that I hadn't been in other games, and beyond this realization, I was given something that I could take with me into the real world. I didn't know who the real Julius Caesar was beyond his assassination in the famous Shakespeare play. But after reading some literature on him, I found it painted his virtual counterpart in a very different, more interesting way. During his monologue, Kaiser calls the Colorado River his Rubicon. The Rubicon is the river that actual Julius Caesar stood before, with his legion after his conquest of Gaul. For him to return to Rome with his legion, he would be committing treason. Political rivals wanted his head and called for his legacy and his army to be dismantled. Caesar knew by crossing this inconsequential river he would start a civil war, and through doing so he would end the reign of democracy in Rome. The fall of the Roman Republic would mean a new, more different Rome. After seriously pondering the world-changing decision, Caesar is quoted as saying, "The die is cast," and marches into Rome. This history complicates how we see Kaiser. This moment being inevitable is shaken by the fact that this conquering of the NCR and thus Mojave has already happened, and he failed. To players paying attention, you can see the holes through his confident bravado. Now let's get back to his monologue, and he discusses the philosophical idea of
Hegelian dialectics
to justify the conflict, and as is the nature of Hegelian dialectics, just simplified as well. Kaiser gives a very bare-bones definition of Hegelian dialectics, but it works for our purposes. There's a thesis, an antithesis, and then a creation of synthesis. His thesis of the Legion is overtly grandiose and eliminates any nuance to the fight and his role in it. He explains that as something that has to happen, which works inherently well in creating a stark contrast to his enemy, the NCR, establishing themselves as a rekindling of pre-war values in respects to democracy, rule of law, and the same bureaucratic deficiencies. Whenever talking with the NCR, the group's voice seems muddled and loose, as everyone has their own idea of what an NCR rule should be, and you'll find many soldiers discussing the futility of their situation.
It's no picnic, I'll tell you that much. My troops are out here every day dying for the NCR, but they've left us out to dry.
Damn shame about Morales. She enlisted to be closer to her husband.
When I got this assignment, I was hoping there'd be more gambling.
In Caesar's Legion, this is not the case. At first glance, the quest structure and overall diverse insight you get about the many facets of Caesar's Legion is sparse and simple, but this truthfully reflects the need for control Caesar strives for with his Legion. This intertwining of the usual game structure fallout with this antagonist creates a depth for Caesar and what he stands for. Beyond a few high officers, the Legion talks as a collective. There's no dissent because it isn't allowed. This need for extremes is what Caesar thrives on, what the Legion thrives on, but by living in these extremes he lives a lie. His need to play dress-up in ancient history to get purpose is pathetic and wholly compelling to watch. The mixture of historical, philosophical, and a classic case of hubris creates a character I have enjoyed playing against and with through numerous playthroughs. He rests as a hallmark of writing in the video game medium. And to fully give an idea of how outstanding Caesar is, I want to touch upon Fallout 3's antagonist again, Colonel Autumn. He is... Okay, well let me just give some background for him and see if that yields any interesting insight for comparison. Colonel Autumn is the number 2 to President Eden of the Enclave, a pre-war organization created to outlast the apocalypse and keep pre-war American values. Now this could be an interesting character using the backdrop of American sovereignty in a dead America and how this would affect an individual coming to grip with such a stark reality, knowing of the old world as he would be privy to. But there really isn't anything we know about him outside of his position and his disagreements with President Eden. The disagreements being that President Eden wants to...
Mutations like the super mutants and ghouls must be purged from our society, our world, before we can proceed anew.
The Colonel feels such a stance is too extreme. That on paper, I guess, is interesting, though outside of the throwaway lines from both of these individuals about this conflict, it doesn't go anywhere. That stance is inconsequential in relation to the player outside of one dialogue choice. This line is most important as a way to get you to President Eden. That's all the plot thread is there for mechanically. Well, maybe he's supposed to be more feared through the hushed whispers of others talking about his presence in the wasteland. This all leading up to his big reveal where most of the game you hear secondhand about his crimes against humanity, or maybe even a bit of backstory. Oh, he's only ever brought up by President Eden in conversation. Okay, well what is his role in the plot? Well, he threatens your father, who then...
It'll only be a few more moments.
Run. Run!
This could be something, as the reason your father does this is to save you, and that could create animosity between the Colonel and the player character, though again, this leaves something to be desired, as your father character loses all sympathy because of how he abandons the player character in the beginning of the game and is given no real time to create a relationship with. So, yeah! Okay, what next? Okay, the Colonel kidnaps you, and then you talk for a bit, and then you see him at the end of the game, where you can decide to kill or talk your way up to killing him.
Very well. I shall leave you to your fate.
You have no connection to him, no reason to care. We are given nothing. Kaiser, in contrast, has a definitive presence in the game throughout, whether that be through his raiding parties he has scattered throughout the waste, NCR citizens and officers talking about him, common people talking about him, or even just propaganda posters that litter the world warning NCR citizens of his presence. For all of this, we can gather that Caesar is someone to be feared. Another check for Caesar is his backstory, which is well solidified. The background is interesting and is examined through many lenses in and out of the Legion. Even his role in the plot is significant, as he holds the power of one of the main factions in the game. One of these elements being right is incredible, but all of these working together harmoniously is wholly new in the video game landscape. Hopefully, as we move forward as an industry, we create more Caesars and less Colonel Autumns.